On the edge of Signal Hill, Malcolm and Christiaan set out to build an iconic statement. They've integrated a pool and several courtyard gardens into a secure lock-up and go, where the modernist architecture required a simpler, uncluttered approach to interiors.
Christiaan and Malcolm, you two are no strangers to the top billing family. We've visited you many times. What prompted this move?
You know what, we've been doing fashion for so long and absolutely love it, and then we built our studio in Bree Street and it was sort of like, oh, this is quite nice. And this is our second project and hopefully one of plenty more, and we actually live in it as well and we absolutely love it.
I think we got bitten by the development bug. It's a different discipline in design and it's pushed us a little bit, and what we do is we've used principles of what we do in fashion in the building as well. So the colors, the combination of textures, it's been quite an interesting process.
For the joinery, they've boldly chosen to use oriented strand board for its unusual texture. Fold-away glass doors and consistent terrazzo flooring lend a sense of space, with each area defined by an art and furniture installation.
Part of the views are the sort of planters that were created on the edge of each balcony, and it's also sort of give it its softening edges. So when you look over, it doesn't really end just with the balustrade and the concrete lines, but it's actually softened by the plants.
The most important thing about this house is design. Everything has had design and living taken into account. So even in the basement, in the garage, we didn't want you just to drive into an ugly garage. We wanted it to be beautiful enough that if you want to have a party down there, you can. We actually built a guest loo downstairs so that you have that option to use that space. It's about maximizing the space and maximizing the way we're going to live, not necessarily how we live now.
In fashion, the guys first do a mock-up of a new design in calico. With their home, they had to trust architects Christiaan van Aswegen and Annemie van den Heever to get it right first time.
Designing the perfect home for any client can be quite challenging, but I imagine working with two creators who have such an eye for detail must have been quite tough.
It definitely was. Christiaan and Malcolm have a very distinctive vision, and that reads through on multiple levels.
They definitely pushed us out of our comfort zone, but we're very happy with the way it came out.
What was the initial brief?
Well, we started out just having a site, having to figure out what to do. But Malcolm was very clear that he wanted an unusual design, something that can challenge people. And he even made a little doodle sketch which showed overlapping planes and a complex shape that came together, which very much informed the shape of the building.
The property itself is quite an awkward shape. How did you work around it?
Because the property is shaped like a trapezoid, which tapers very sharply towards the street, what we had to do to unlock the design was to create a structural grid that runs parallel and at 90 degrees to the longest neighboring property. That allowed us to create ideal orientation, a logical flow from public to private space, and a series of courtyard gardens.
Speaking of which, I really love the greenery that you've added. Was this important to you?
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of very structural elements here and quite hard lines, and we wanted to soften it. The green is always important to us, but we also wanted to sense the mountain, where the property is, between the view and the mountain, what was coming down into the property, so it kind of blended together.
This waffle ceiling is something you don't see very often.
Because of the way that you approach the house, you come at a lower angle. The first thing that you do actually notice is the slab, and therefore it became like a very important design element.
What was the reason for having a slightly elevated pool?
It's a consequence of having to accommodate a car underneath, but it also has to do with the fact that we wanted to create a raised, mirrored finish. And what we like about the effect is that it becomes an outdoor seat. It's another element that draws you into the outdoors.
The waffle design of the slabs uses far less concrete, and UV filters on windows cuts down on energy loss, which is important in the cooler months. In this living area, they've used an entire wall to frame an unframed painting.
This space has a very different feel to it.
I think we intentionally decorated it slightly different, both units, and downstairs a little bit more feminine, a bit softer, and probably more cooler for the summer days with the pool and the doors open. Where upstairs we've concentrated on making it a little bit more dark, a little bit more warmer for the winter nights, where we would put the fire on, close the doors, and have then the view to look at.
The house is very contemporary and brutalist. How did you manage to soften it?
I think it's important to not take away from the frame or the architecture. We always say you want to incorporate it as much with the decor as possible. And to soften it up, it's the comfort and the luxury of the couch and the carpets that makes it warmer. I think it's important to get a good balance like that, but again, not trying to over-decorate it and let the building speak for itself.
This multi-grained showstopper was the result of buying a whole lot of marble at a sale and wondering what to do with it. So they designed a table.
What tributes to your fashion can be seen throughout your home?
In fashion, we're known for color and we're known for texture and fabrication, and I think it's very evident. We've transferred it into the property as well. We've mixed different textures. We've got the terrazzo flooring, which goes inside and out, which extends the spaces. We've got the oriented strand board for the kitchens and for the wardrobes that also just brings a different texture element. You know, a lot of the time you get this very flatness, and we wanted that texture. We always say with our clothes, you've got to feel good in them as well, and it's the same in the property.
Christiaan and Malcolm's pared-down interiors are a result of moving out of their old house, realizing they had too many things and allowing themselves room to breathe.
You've managed to make the house feel quite spacious while incorporating so many different elements. What tips could you give to others to help them get this right?
I think it's about balance. So we've always said you should never have a scheme because you get so boxed in by it. Have things that you love and they'll kind of find themselves their own place. It makes it more real, it gives it more personality. Everything has space around it, you can see it. It's almost framed. I think there's a whole series of frames in here, including the views, but also the furniture and the decor. Everything has its place and it sits in there.
By resisting excess decor, a set of bedside lamps gets to take center stage. The interior architecture and finishes aren't competing for attention with clutter. Glazed sliding doors vanishing into wall cavities doubles the space in every room.
This is amazing. Oh, how really incredible. This view is absolutely breathtaking.
I think this is all about the view. I think that's exactly it. I think the earth was quite unique in that it sat between the mountain, like right on the top of the mountain, with that view in front. And I think we had to show that you had to be able to lie in bed and wake up to this beautiful Cape Town view. We just had to maximize it.
I think it was also literally creating the main bedroom on top of the rest of the apartment, so it really feels that it's exclusive and a little bit of a hiding spot. Also, you've got back windows that goes back to the mountain, like Malcolm was saying. You really have a 360-degree view of the whole city, and I think it's also very special that nobody ever can build in it. So you'll always have this view.
With their statement home, Malcolm and Christiaan have gifted themselves the kind of in-house fashion shoot location stylists dream of.
You've worked together on your fashion brand for many years, but what's it like building a home together?
I think it's been very, very interesting, and we're very lucky that the same with fashion. Malcolm is a little bit more of an all-round cohesive look, and I'm more detail-orientated, and it's actually happened in the property side as well. He's got an idea in his mind that's maybe a little bit crazy, and I'll go, okay, how are we going to make this work? I think it's this, and we're very honest with each other, and I think it's very important like that. But listen, like anything else in life, it's not always easy working together and living together, but it works well.
What would you say you've enjoyed most about this whole process?
It's beautiful to look at the end result versus what we've decided in the beginning, or what we were thinking we were going to do. Even living in the space ourselves now and actually seeing what we created and that it was so successful is quite beautiful for me.
Being the creator and the client is a little different to fashion, where we're not giving it over to someone else, we're actually giving it over to ourselves. So we get a little bit more chance to experiment. I know it's quite an expensive experiment, but it does help us push ourselves as much and maybe just create something that's going to have some kind of legacy in Cape Town in terms of design, because I think people always go for the lowest common denominator, and we're really trying to push the design and show people what is possible.
While making the most of the view, their home has become a daring landmark.